So, you want to go to college? Good for you. Figure it out yourself. That was it. That was the big send-off. My mother said those words while sliding a $145,000 tuition check across the mahogany dinner table to my little sister, Chloe. Same table, same Tuesday night pot roast, same parents, but a totally different daughter. 9 years later, I was standing in the very back of Chloe's wedding. A wedding paid for by the same parents who told me they couldn't spare a single dime for my future. I watched my mother, Diane, scan the room with this look of practiced perfection, leaning in to whisper to my father, "Why does it feel like something is missing?" Before anyone could even breathe an answer, the groom turned absolutely ghost white. He looked at me, then he looked at Chloe, then he looked back at me, and he said one single word that silenced 250 guests. What that word was and what happened next completely nuked a wedding, exposed a decade of family lies, and broke a 9-year silence in under 4 minutes. My name is Maya Sterling. I'm 27 years old, and honestly, this isn't some petty revenge story. This is a survival story that just happens to end with a heavy dose of justice. Let's go back to the night that changed everything. I grew up in one of those classic white colonial houses on Willow Lane in Greenwich, Connecticut. 4 bedrooms, a pristine 2-car garage, and a lawn my father, Bill, mowed every Saturday like his life depended on it. From the street, we looked like the poster family for the American dream. From the inside, though? Well, that depended on which sister you asked. My mother had a system. She never wrote it down, but the vibes were loud and clear. Chloe was the investment. I was the overhead. Chloe got the private tennis lessons and the elite coaching. I got the hand-me-down textbooks and the good luck pats on the head. Chloe got a brand new designer dress for every single school dance, while I was told to get creative with what was already in my closet. My mother didn't even try to hide the favoritism. At neighborhood cookouts, she'd introduce us like a product line. "This is my daughter, Chloe. She's going to change the world," she'd beam. Then she'd just wave a hand vaguely toward me. "And this is Maya." No hype, no pride, just a name. The refrigerator was basically a shrine to Chloe's existence. Cheerleading photos, honor society ribbons, a dried corsage from her junior prom, every square inch was covered. One morning during my sophomore year, I tried to reclaim some territory. I stuck my own honor roll certificate right in the middle with a magnet. By the time I walked through the door after school, it was gone. "The fridge was getting way too cluttered, Maya," my mother said, not even looking up from her tablet. My father was a different kind of heartbreak. He wasn't mean. He was just strategically absent. He'd catch me in the hallway sometimes when my mother was in the other room and squeeze my shoulder. "I'm proud of you, kid," he'd mutter. Always a whisper. Always when the coast was clear, like being proud of his oldest daughter was some sort of dirty secret he had to keep from his wife. I kept telling myself things would change once I got into college. I worked my tail off and landed a spot at the University of Connecticut with a scholarship that covered more than half. I just needed them to bridge the gap. That dinner in May 2011 is etched into my brain. I was 18, graduation was 2 weeks away, and I was ready. I'd printed out a full-blown business case for my education, the scholarship letter, the tuition breakdown, a 4-year budget on a spreadsheet, and my plan for part-time work. I only needed $75,000 over 4 years. Practiced my pitch in the bathroom mirror until I sounded like a pro. The air in the dining room felt heavy. Chloe was busy texting, and my father was dissecting his steak in total silence. I waited until my mother was halfway through her second glass of Chardonnay before I laid the folder on the table. "I'm going to UConn," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "I've got the scholarship, but I need some help with the rest." My mother didn't even open the folder. "Maya, we've already talked about this. You need to learn some independence." I felt like I'd been slapped. "We haven't talked about it once," I countered. "The real world doesn't just hand you things on a silver platter," she said, her voice like ice. I looked at the check sitting by Chloe's plate. You're paying Chloe's full ride at NYU. My mother folded her napkin with terrifying precision. Chloe's situation is different. She has a certain spark that needs a specific environment. You? You're more resilient. You'll figure it out. I looked at my dad. He just stared at his peas. His fork didn't move. He didn't say a word. Neither did Chloe. None of that sucks or I'll help. Nothing. This conversation is over, my mother said. If you want it bad enough, you'll find a way. That's what strong people do. I gathered my papers, my hands shaking so hard I thought I'd drop the folder. I wanted to scream, I wanted to flip the table, but mostly I just wanted to disappear. I wouldn't cry, though. No way. Later that night, my father caught me in the hall. Here it comes, I thought. The apology. Your mother has her reasons, Maya, he said. Just give it some time. Then he just walked away, back to the TV, back to the peace that was bought with my silence. The next morning at 5 a.m. I packed one suitcase. I had exactly $400 in my savings account. I left my house key on the counter right next to the coffee maker so she'd find it first thing. No note. What was there left to say? As I walked to the garage, I saw my dad sitting in his car, engine off, just staring through the windshield. We locked eyes for 3 seconds. Felt like an eternity. He didn't open the door. I didn't stop. I just kept walking toward the bus stop on the main road. My first week at college was brutal. My dorm room had a mattress that felt like a brick and a window that rattled every time the wind blew. I'd forgotten to pack sheets, so I slept in my hoodie for the first 3 nights. I picked up 3 jobs immediately: scrubbing dishes at a local diner, working the graveyard shift at a 24-hour gas station, and joining the weekend cleaning crew for the campus gyms. My life became a jigsaw puzzle of naps and caffeine. I was so exhausted I once fell asleep in my chemistry lab and woke up with my forehead on the table. 2 weeks in, I broke down and called my mother. I don't know why, maybe I was hoping she'd had a change of heart. You made your bed, Maya, she said. Don't call me just to make me feel guilty. She hung up. 7 seconds. That was the last time we spoke for a decade. 10 minutes later, a text popped up from Chloe. Mom says you're being a drama queen. Just come home and say sorry. That was the narrative they were spinning. I wasn't the kid they cut off, I was the difficult one who ran away. That first year nearly took me out. I had no safety net. When I got second-degree burns on my hand from a kitchen accident at the diner, I couldn't afford a doctor. I wrapped it in gauze from the gas station's first aid kit and went to class. My GPA was tanking, and I was terrified of losing my scholarship. That's when I met Professor David Vance. He was the sharp-witted guy who actually cared. He saw me nodding off in his seminar and pulled me aside. I gave him the short version of my life story. He didn't give me pity. He gave me a job in his research lab. You're too bright to burn out over a dish pit, he told me. While I was grinding, Chloe was living it up. I'd see the Facebook posts because, even though I'd blocked them, my Aunt Sarah would accidentally mention things. Chloe got a brand new Jeep for her birthday. Best parents ever. She'd caption it. My mother would comment, anything for my princess. I'd be sitting in the campus laundry room at 3 a.m. staring at those photos, feeling a mix of rage and total numbness. I decided right then that I didn't need a redemption arc with them. I just needed a life they couldn't touch. By sophomore year, I met Elena. She was pre-med, daughter of immigrants, and worked just as hard as I did. We became a 2-woman army. We'd share $5 pizzas and talk about the companies we were going to build. I started writing this technical paper for Professor Vance about data optimization in small medical clinics. It was dry as toast, but I loved it. It was the first thing in my life that belonged entirely to me. I graduated with honors on a blistering Sunday in May. There were 5,000 people in that stadium, and not one of them was my family. Elena was there, screaming her head off when I crossed the stage. We celebrated with greasy fries at a dive bar. Within a month, I had a job. By 25, I was starting my own company, MedLink Systems. I lived on ramen and worked 100-hour weeks. I changed my professional name to Maya Vance, taking my mentor's name as a tribute. I didn't want any part of this sterling legacy. Then, out of the blue, my phone buzzed with a Connecticut number I hadn't seen in years. It was Chloe. "Hey, it's me," she said like no time had passed. "I need a favor. 8 grand. Don't tell Mom and Dad, okay?" I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. "No," I said and hung up. 30 minutes later, my mother called, screaming about how I was a cold-hearted sister. I realized then that they would never change. So I blocked them again and went back to work. My company, MedLink, started blowing up. We were helping small clinics go digital without the massive price tag. By 27, I was closing a multi-million-dollar deal with a massive healthcare group called Lakeside Partners. The CFO, a guy named Marcus Thorne, was sharp, professional, and really impressed with my software. We were in the middle of due diligence, which is basically a fancy way of saying we had to verify every single piece of data in their system. As part of the deal, my team had to run a background check on all their administrative staff to make sure everyone was properly licensed. It was standard procedure. While scrolling through the roster, a name jumped off the screen. Chloe Sterling, Senior Administrator. I felt a cold chill. I checked her credentials. Claimed she had a master's from Yale and 5 years of high-level experience. My system flagged it immediately. No record found. Chloe hadn't just been pampered. She had lied her way into a high-paying job at the very company I was about to partner with. A week later, a gold-embossed invitation arrived at my apartment. Chloe was marrying Marcus Thorne, my biggest client, the man who was about to sign a check that would make my company a titan. Tucked inside the invite was a scrap of notebook paper. "Please come, Maya." "Dad." I told Elena I wasn't going. "Maya," she said, "you're a CEO now. You're powerful. Go there, hold your head high, and show them you didn't just survive, you won." So I went. The wedding was at this massive estate on the water. It was sickeningly beautiful. I wore a simple, elegant navy dress and walked in with Elena. I saw my Aunt Sarah, who looked at me like I was a ghost. Then I saw my mother. She looked at me with this fake pageant queen smile. "Maya, how unexpected," she hissed, pulling me aside. "Don't you dare ruin this for her. Chloe has worked so hard for this life." "Hard?" I asked. "Is that what we're calling it?" My father found me a moment later. He looked older, tired. He hugged me so hard I thought he might break. "I'm sorry," he whispered. It was too little, too late, but it was something. Then came the moment. The reception was in full swing. Marcus was standing at the head table, looking like the happiest man alive. He'd been telling everyone about the brilliant tech genius who was going to save his company millions. He hadn't seen me yet. We'd only ever done Zoom calls and emails, and I always used the name Maya Vance. As the toasts began, Marcus stood up. He looked out at the crowd and his eyes landed on me in the back. He froze. Color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. He looked at Chloe, who was grinning like a Cheshire cat, then back at me. The room went silent. 250 people were staring at him. He gripped the microphone, his knuckles white. "Maya," he whispered, carried through the speakers like a thunderclap. My mother's face turned a weird shade of purple. Chloe's smile wavered. "You know her?" Chloe asked, her voice trembling. Marcus didn't look at his bride. He looked at me, the overhead daughter, the difficult one who wasn't supposed to be anything. "That's Maya Vance," he said, his voice shaking with a mix of confusion and realization. "She's the CEO of MedLink. She's the one who just sent over the audit report." He looked at Chloe, then at the audit papers he had tucked into his jacket pocket. papers that proved his new wife had forged her entire career. The silence was deafening. The lie was dead. And I just took a sip of my champagne and finally felt the weight of that $145,000 check lift off my shoulders for good. The speeches started right after the main course, and the room was buzzing with that expensive, high-society energy. Marcus's best man went first, a charming, forgettable guy who told a few safe jokes about college. Then came Chloe's maid of honor, some sorority sister who literally cried on cue like she'd been rehearsing in front of a ring light. Polite applause, the clinking of crystal glasses, the usual wedding rhythm. Then my mother stood up. Diane Sterling took that microphone like she was born to hold it. She looked out at the sea of 250 guests, dabbed her eyes before she even uttered a syllable, and gave a smile that was pure, polished theater. Performance was immaculate. "I want to talk about what it means to raise a daughter," she began. I felt my grip tighten around my water glass until my knuckles turned white. She went on this long, winding monologue about sacrifice. She talked about the late nights, the early mornings, and how she and Bill had poured every ounce of their souls into Chloe's future. She bragged about Chloe's incredible academic dedication and her unwavering independence. "I raised my daughter to be independent," Diane said, her voice wavering with practiced emotion. "To chase her dreams, to never settle for less than the best. And today, she's marrying a man who is worthy of everything she has built. Independent." That word hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. It was the exact same word she'd used as a weapon to deny me a future 9 years ago. "Maya, you're so resilient. Maya, you need to learn independence." To her, for me, independence meant abandonment. For Chloe, it apparently meant a $145,000 gift and a free ride. "Chloe is living proof," Diane continued, "that when a family truly invests in their children, beautiful things happen." The room erupted in applause. People were actually wiping away tears. I sat there, frozen, feeling the heavy silence of my own history. Elena's hand found mine under the table, squeezing hard, grounding me. Then Diane's gaze drifted across the ballroom, skipped over the expensive centerpieces, past the important guests, and landed right on me in the back corner. There was a pause. It was deliberate. "And of course," she added, her voice dropping an octave, "we love all our children." She said it like a footnote, like an afterthought stapled to the bottom of a finished project just so the teacher wouldn't mark her down. A few heads turned toward the back of the room to find the other daughter. I kept my face a mask of stone. I wanted to laugh, I wanted to scream, I wanted to walk up there and take the mic, but I didn't. Diane wrapped up with a grand, sweeping gesture. "People ask me, why does it feel like something is missing today? And I tell them it's because our family is finally complete again." More applause. Diane returned to her seat, practically glowing from the adoration. A few minutes later, I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder. I turned to see my father. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting around to see if Diane was watching. "She didn't mean it like that, Maya," he whispered. "She was just caught up in the moment." "She meant exactly that, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "She always does." He opened his mouth to defend her, but nothing came out. He just patted my shoulder once and retreated back to the head table, back to his life of quiet compliance. I wasn't going to cause a scene. That was the plan. I was going to finish my water, wait for the cake, and vanish into the night. But then the universe decided it was done with the lies. Marcus, the groom, started walking toward the back of the room. He was with a man I recognized instantly, Greg Harmon, his business partner. I'd spent 3 hours on a high-stakes video call with Greg just last week negotiating the technical specs of our $2.8 million deal. Greg saw me first. He's a stocky guy with a voice that could cut through a hurricane. He stopped dead in his tracks 3 feet from my table. "Maya? Maya Vance?" "From Medlink." Marcus stopped too. His head whipped from Greg to me, then back to Greg. "Wait. Maya what?" His brain was clearly misfiring. He looked at me, then at the name on the guest list in his head. Your name is Maya Sterling? But the contract, the firm, you're Maya Vance. I stood up slowly. Hi, Marcus. Hi, Greg. But Alcott, no Vance, Marcus was stammering. He looked like he'd just seen a glitch in the Matrix. Wait, you're Chloe's sister? The older sister. Maya Sterling Vance, I said, using my full legal and professional name for the first time in that house. Chloe's older sister. I've gone by Vance professionally for years. The air in our little corner of the ballroom turned electric. I watched Marcus do the math. He was thinking about the $2.8 million contract, the cutting-edge software, and the troubled, estranged sister Chloe had mentioned exactly once in a dismissive tone. She never... Marcus trailed off, his face hardening. She never mentioned her sister was the CEO of the company we're betting our entire expansion on. She said her sister was. He caught himself, but the damage was done. Was what, Marcus? I asked, tilting my head. Difficult? Finding herself? Unstable. His eyes dropped to the floor. She said you were estranged. That you had issues. That you couldn't be trusted with family matters. By now, the people at the surrounding tables were leaning in. A conversation this intense with the groom is like a car crash. You can't help but stare. My mother appeared out of thin air, moving with the speed of a heat-seeking missile. Marcus, darling, don't let Maya bend your ear, Diane said, her voice dripping with fake honey. She's just here to enjoy the party, not to talk shop. Let's get you back to the dance floor. Marcus looked at Diane like she was speaking a foreign language. Talk shop? Mrs. Sterling, do you have any idea who this is? This is the woman whose company is about to take Lakeside Partners into the next decade. We're about to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with her. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. For one glorious second, Diane Sterling looked human. Her mouth fell open. Her eyes went wide, darting between Marcus and me as her brain tried to reconcile the overhead daughter with the powerhouse CEO. Then the smile returned, but it was thin, brittle, and terrifying. Well, she hissed, isn't that a surprise? Across the room, Chloe was watching us. She'd been laughing with a bridesmaid, but she'd turned into a statue. She set her champagne glass down and started walking toward us, and for the first time in my life, I saw pure, unadulterated terror in my sister's eyes. She wasn't afraid of me. She was afraid the golden pedestal she'd sat on for 9 years was about to crumble. Marcus didn't wait for her to get there. He was riding a wave of adrenaline and confusion. He walked straight to the stage, grabbed the microphone from the stand, and tapped it. Thump. Thump. Everyone, sorry to interrupt the music, Marcus shouted. 250 faces turned. The string quartet stopped mid-note. I just found out something absolutely incredible that I have to share. He pointed right at me. The CEO of MedLink Systems, the woman who is literally transforming the healthcare tech industry and our company, is here tonight. And she happens to be Chloe's big sister. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Maya Vance, or Maya Sterling, built her empire from absolutely nothing, Marcus continued, his voice booming with genuine respect. No family money, no fancy kickstarts. She coded her first platform while working 3 jobs and putting herself through school. She's a Forbes 30 Under 30 finalist, and she's been sitting at the back table all night. Let's give it up for her. The silence lasted for 3 beats, and then it broke. A few people started clapping, then more, then the whole room was cheering. People were craning their necks to see me. I saw cousins who hadn't called me in a decade standing up to get a better look. I stood there, nodded once to Marcus, and said, "Thank you, Marcus. But today is about the bride. Let's get back to the celebration." But it was too late. The narrative had shifted. I could see the guests whispering. Wait, isn't that the daughter Diane said was a burnout? Forbes? CEO? The social currency in the room was being redistributed in real time, and my mother was officially bankrupt. She sat at the head table, her face a rigid mask of polite fury. Aunt Sarah, the woman who'd called me difficult more times than I could count, scurried up to me, her face flushed. "Maya, why didn't you tell us you were doing so well?" "I tried, Aunt Sarah," I said, my voice ice cold. 6 years ago. You told me I was being dramatic and hung up. She didn't have a comeback for that. She just blinked and melted back into the crowd. But the success reveal was just the appetizer. The real bomb was still ticking. Chloe finally reached Marcus. I couldn't hear them, but I could see the frantic way her hands were moving. She was trying to spin it, trying to contextualize why she'd lied. Marcus had his arms crossed. He was shaking his head slowly. Diane intercepted me before I could get to the bar. "You planned this," she hissed, her voice vibrating with rage. "You came here to humiliate your sister on her wedding day." "Planned what, Mom?" "Being successful." I looked her dead in the eye. "That was your idea, remember? Be independent." "Well, I took your advice. I became so independent I didn't need you at all. If the truth humiliates Chloe, maybe you should have raised her to be honest instead of perfect." "You always had to make everything about you," she snapped. "I haven't seen you in 9 years, Diane. I didn't ask for the mic. Your son-in-law gave it to me because he respects my work. Maybe you should try it sometime." She turned and stormed off, her hand shaking so hard she almost dropped her clutch. 5 minutes later, Marcus appeared at my side. He didn't look like a happy groom anymore. He looked like a man who just realized he was standing on a trapdoor. "Maya, can we talk?" "Outside." "Please." We stepped onto the stone balcony. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the Connecticut vineyards in gold and purple. It was the kind of view people pay millions for. "My team sent over the final due diligence report this morning," Marcus said, staring at his phone. "I was so busy with the wedding prep I didn't open the attachment until 10 minutes ago." He turned the screen toward me. It was the credential verification for his administrative staff. Chloe's name was highlighted in red. "It says her master's from NYU doesn't exist," he said, his voice flat. "It says she enrolled, attended for 3 semesters, and then dropped out. She never graduated. She's been working at my firm for 2 years on a completely forged resume." I took a deep breath. "I know. My compliance officer flagged it 48 hours ago. I was going to tell you Monday, Marcus. I didn't want to blow up your life on your wedding day, but I also couldn't sign that contract knowing there was a liability in your C-suite." Marcus gripped the stone railing. "She lied to me about everything. Her degree, her issues with you, her hard work. She's been playing a character." "Marcus, I'm sorry," I said, and I actually meant it. "I didn't want it to happen like this." "I'm going to ask her," he said. "Right now. In front of her mother. If she lies to my face one more time, I'm done." "Marcus, don't." But he was already moving. I followed him back into the ballroom. The music was playing, people were dancing, but the atmosphere was brittle. Chloe was standing by the 5-tier wedding cake, trying to look like a happy bride for the photographer. "Chloe," Marcus said. He didn't shout, but the tone of his voice was like a gunshot. "Did you graduate from NYU?" The photographer stopped. The bridesmaids froze. Chloe laughed, that high, tinkling sound that always got her what she wanted. "Marcus, what?" "Course I did. We have the pictures." "The ceremony pictures, Chloe. Not the diploma. I'm asking you again. Did you graduate?" Chloe's eyes darted to Diane. Diane stepped forward, trying to run interference. "Marcus, this is hardly the time or place." "Did she graduate, Diane?" Marcus turned on her. "You told me she was the star of her class. You told me you were so proud of her master's thesis." "She worked so hard," Diane started. She dropped out in 2013. Marcus finally snapped. The records are right here. She's been lying to me, and she's been lying to the board of my company. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the kind of silence that stays with you for the rest of your life. 250 people watched as Chloe's face literally crumpled. The princess persona fell away, leaving a terrified, caught-in-a-lie 25-year-old girl. I was going to tell you, Chloe sobbed. I didn't want to disappoint Mom. She had so much riding on me being the successful one. Marcus looked at Chloe, then he looked at Diane, and then he looked at me, standing 10 feet away, the daughter they'd thrown away like trash. This person, Marcus said, gesturing to me, his voice cracking with emotion. Maya is the only honest person in this entire family. She's the only one who actually did the work you all bragged about. He looked at Chloe one last time. The wedding is over. He walked off the stage, through the crowd, and straight out the front doors. Greg and the groomsmen followed him in a silent, confused procession. The room exploded into a low, electric murmur. People were grabbing their coats. Aunt Sarah was staring at her shoes. Chloe sank to the floor, her $10,000 silk dress pooling around her like a deflated balloon. She was wailing a raw, ugly sound. Diane turned on me, her eyes filled with a venom I'll never forget. Are you happy now? She screamed. You destroyed her life. You came here and you burned it all down. I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. No, Diane. Chloe burned it down when she decided to build her life on a pile of lies. I just provided the light so everyone could see the smoke. You could have been proud of the daughter who actually succeeded, but you were too busy trying to manufacture a version of the one who didn't. I turned and walked away. Elena was right behind me. I was halfway across the gravel parking lot when I heard footsteps. I thought it was Diane coming for round 2, but I turned and saw my father. He was out of breath, his tie hanging loose, his eyes red and swollen. Maya, wait, he gasped. I stopped. I'm done, Dad. I've got nothing left for you guys. I know, he said, his voice trembling. I have to say it. I knew it was wrong. Every year, every dinner, every time she talked about you like you were a failure. I knew it was a lie. Then why didn't you say anything? I felt the tears finally starting to prick at my eyes. Why did you let me sleep on a bare mattress for 3 months? Why did you let her treat me like I didn't exist? He looked at the ground, a broken man. Because I was a coward, Maya. It was easier to lose you than to fight her. And I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. Yeah, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You will. I don't hate you, Dad. But I don't have a place for you in my life right now. Maybe ever. I got into the car. Elena drove. I didn't cry until we were on the Merritt Parkway, miles away from the estate, miles away from the lies. The fallout was massive. Marcus called off the wedding permanently. He also had to fire Chloe from Lakeside Partners. Credential fraud is a massive legal liability in healthcare. She wasn't just unemployed, she was unhireable in the industry. I heard she moved back into the white colonial on Willow Lane, living in her old room, avoiding the neighbors. Diane's shrine on the refrigerator didn't mean much after that. Her social circle in Greenwich evaporated. People in those circles love success, but they hate being lied to even more. Aunt Sarah called me a week later to apologize, but I didn't pick up. Marcus and I kept the deal. We signed the contract a month later. It was strictly professional, but there was a mutual respect there. He sent me a note on the day the system went live. Thank you for the truth. Cost me a wedding, but it saved my life. 2 months after the wedding, a package arrived at my office in Boston. No return address, just a Connecticut postmark. Inside was a piece of paper that looked like it had been through a war. It was my honor roll certificate from sophomore year. The one Diane had taken off the fridge. It was yellowed and wrinkled at the edges. There was a sticky note on the back in my father's shaky handwriting. It was never cluttered, Maya. It was always yours. I'm sorry I waited 12 years to give it back. I looked at that piece of paper for a long time. Then I put it in a frame and hung it on the wall of my CEO office right next to my Forbes plaque. People ask me if I feel vindicated. They ask if I enjoyed seeing the golden child fall. But honestly, that's not what it was about. I didn't need them to be wrong for me to be right. I just needed to be free. For 9 years, I lived under a shadow my mother built. I thought I was the overhead. I thought I was the difficult one. But as I look out over the Boston skyline from my office, I realize that resilience wasn't a punishment they gave me. It was the fuel that built my empire. I'm Maya Vance. I'm 27 years old. I have a family of my own choosing, a company that changes lives, and I sleep perfectly at night. To anyone out there who's being told they're just the overhead, keep going. Build your own table. 'Cause one day they're going to have to ask you for a seat.